Here in Sweden, we are suffering a tremendous crime wave with a lot of shootings and even bombings. We've also had Muslim extremist terrorist attacks. So what is behind this? Follow me in this video and I will go through what I interpret to be the real reasons behind these events. And it's connected to the global situation. So let's get started. The UN has a report about the cocaine trade. And I will show you now a little bit how what they are saying is biased because they leave out crucial things to understand what's going on. If we look at the people who are involved, of course, first we have those who are dealing directly with the cocaine or the merca, as they say in Spanish. We have the farmers who grow the bushes, harvest the leaves, and often they themselves process the leaves into pasta de coca to concentrate it. And then we have the field labs, it could be the same, or we have buyers, which can be cartels, but it can also be, and now in Colombia, it's largely the guerrilla, the ELN, Ejército de Liberación Nacional, a communist guerrilla created with the support of Cuba in 1964 in order to convert Colombia into a communist country. They are the ones who are the main buyers and security of the coca growing districts, and they act with the consent of the president Gustavo Petro of Colombia, and that is something that I personally have observed. If you go out and read United Nations reports and things like that, you will not find it. That's another bias. So they then get that pasta and they transport it to labs. And those labs may be in Venezuela. A large part of the pasta de coca from Colombia goes to Venezuela, where it's processed in industrial facilities. And from there, now it belongs to the cartel, right? In Venezuela, it's Cartel de los Soles, the military cartel that is practically part of the government. And while I'm talking about this, let me tell you, in Venezuela, the illegitimate president is called Nicolás Maduro, but the number 2 guy, Diosdado Cabello, is the head of the Cartel de los Soles, according to our informant, who was his closest bodyguard for 12 years. And he also told us that on one occasion, the wife of the illegitimate president, Nicolás Maduro, Cilia Flores, was negotiating with the Americans about handing over Diosdado Cabello to the Americans. But for some reason, I forgot why, it didn't come to fruition. So instead, Diosdado goes to abroad to meet, I think it was in Haiti, to meet with the Americans. And he gave them proof that the children of the sons of Cilia Flores, the nephews of the illegitimate president, were transporting tons of cocaine destined for the United States and weapons. And they got convicted to very long prison sentences in the United States. So you see, Maduro and Diosdado Cabello are cooperating out of necessity, but not out of friendship. That is a conflict within. So these then refine it, and then the cartels, they package it for transport, and smugglers take it out. They can take it over air, on boats, out on ships, over land in Central America, where it reaches the other country, where there will be a need for cooperation. People have to receive it, and they have to get it past customs, past controls in the harbor and airports and so on. So there have to be people who are taking a pay in order to help this get through. And then you have the importers. It gets to the people who are the importers of it, who then store it in safe places and divide it up to the distributors, and often it's 2 levels of distributors, each one packaging it in smaller and smaller pieces, and finally it gets to the dealers who cut it up and package it for the end user, and it goes out to retail sale. I've seen that when I was in Miami, how they were doing that. So all of these are involved with America, the drugs. But then you have all the other people who are involved in this without ever getting close to the drugs. And this is the part that the United Nations passed without going much into depth of. So that's where I'm going to spend the majority of this video now. So we have, for instance, the freight brokers, the 3PL providers, third-person logistic providers. They are people who are crucial in this, who have connections with the organization that developed the cocaine and connections in the countries where the importers are going to receive it, and then they set up the shipment, often with a middleman. And they set up the shipment in a sailing boat or in a container ship and so on. So the shipment is distributed over a lot of different channels, and some groups specialize only in this, how to transport it. So that's an important part of the transport, and that's where the price goes up the most, the international transport, overseas especially. And then we have the money launderers, people who are moving the illicit money up the chain, getting it into investments. How do you take the amount of money in this is mind-boggling. So how do you store this money? Where do you put it? I mean, having it in cash stacks in the jungle is not very efficient. It will just rot away there. So they would like to invest it in something, but you have to invest it in a way that you hide the illicit origin of it. So there are special groups and corrupt banks involved in that. And then you have the marketing. You have to market this. You have to make people buy it. And influencers play a role in this. And the thing here, the marketing campaign for this is simple. Because it's so concentrated, the Cuban cartel controls the majority of the cocaine. So it's like the diamond. When the diamond was a global cartel, they didn't need to go out and say, buy from this company or from that company. All they needed to do was to say, women love diamonds. And wherever they bought the diamonds from, that global cartel of diamonds would get the profit. So that's what they're doing here. They have virtually a monopoly on the cocaine. And all they have to do is to use the media, TV, social media, YouTube, TikTok, to show a world where people are enjoying themselves, laughing, letting loose, and implied that they're using drugs to do it. That's all they have to do. But they are part of the cocaine cartel. Don't get fooled. These influencers who receive money to do that, to get their beauty operations and show this world on Instagram and so on, they are part of the cocaine business. And then we have the legal services, because people will go to jail, they will be arrested. So you need lawyers who work with getting them free, and you need judges who are corrupt, policemen who are corrupt, prosecutors who are corrupt. You need that too, right? And you need lobbyists. Lobbyists who are charged with making sure that the politicians stay in line and don't make laws that destroy the business for them. And you need honey trappers, because in order to control these people, there are different ways. There is compromat, and that's for what the honey trap is for. And there is money, those who just want to get rich. And there is threat. So, and some are in it for ideological reasons. That's why the guerrillas are leftist ideological. And that way, they get the automatic support of a lot of leftists in the world. Because they see, oh, it's a leftist guerrilla they're attacking. Then they support them and they close their eyes, they put on the blindfolds for the fact that this guerrilla is like a major, perhaps the most important drug organization in the world. They don't want to see that because they have political blindfolds on. So the honey trappers, they are charged with developing the compromat against politicians, judges, everybody who has some influence, people who, I'll get back to that. But the way to develop the compromat is you have to make them do something that you can record on video that is absolutely taboo. And one of those things is have sex with underage girls. And there Epstein comes in. That's where his role was in this. So he was also a part of this organization. Because it's not just cocaine. What is really driving this is not just the desire for money. The word rich reveals what it's about. Because rich originally comes from power. That's why it's called Reich, the Third Reich. Rike in Swedish, it's power. And money and power are intimately related. If you have a lot of money, you have power. That's why it's called rich. So what they really want is power. As a friend of mine said, power is the most powerful drug. Once you tasted power, you don't want to let go of it. So that's why they're doing this. And apart from the honey trappers, you also need sovereign nations. Because we live in a world of the United Nations, where we have an organization with states, with sovereign nations that cooperate. So in order to have an influence and to have an insight into what they're doing, like you want to have your people, if you're a drug cartel, you would like to have your people in Interpol, right? You want to have them inside the police to know what the police is doing. You want to have them inside the United Nations to prevent the United Nations from writing the truth about what you're doing, right? That's why you need sovereign nations. That was what Pablo Escobar wanted to do to get to the presidency in Colombia. He couldn't do it. But now they have the presidency in Venezuela. And they have it in Cuba since a long time. And they have it in Nicaragua too. And then, apart from that, you also need a superpower. Because sovereign nations can be attacked, like what happened with Noriega in Panama, when the US went in and took him out, even though he was the president of a sovereign nation. But if you have the protection of a superpower with nuclear bombs, you're pretty much safe. And that's where Vladimir Putin comes in. Superpower protection, and also by him, you get a veto in the Security Council. And then another thing that perhaps a lot don't think about. You need terrorists. The role of the terrorists is to create chaos, to create violence, because you need the violence and the lack of police control in key areas in order to do the transportations, to grow the coca, and to get the weapons. You need to have illegal arms trade. A lot of things that you need to do, you need chaos in order to be able to do. And that's where the terrorist organizations come in. So Venezuela, the drug cartel in Venezuela, the Cuban cartel, because Cuba is really the country that's controlling Venezuela now, I say that they financed Hezbollah and they financed Hamas. When Hamas attacked Israel in Gaza, it was financed by the cocaine cartel. And finally, who is paying for all this? Well, if you are using cocaine, you are. It's the people who are buying cocaine, who are using cocaine, who are financing this terrorism, crimes against humanity, genocide in Venezuela, it's all being financed by the... It could be a couple with children who want to go out and have some fun a weekend and use cocaine, and they are the ones who are financing all this evil in the world. An evil that is threatening the very civilization we are living in, because they will want more and more power, and they will not stop until they have taken control over the world. A globalist organization. And once that happened, and we have no more freedom and democracy, once the beacon of liberty has fallen, we are pretty much finished. And then there is only one solution to get out of that, and that is, unfortunately, a global revolution against this organization. I have been studying the prehistory of Europe, and I have found that we have gone through these cycles of power concentration and power corruption to the point where people have rebelled and thrown them out and reset the civilization. And when they reset it, they erase the traces of the past, and that's why we don't have it in our history books. But that is the cycle. So if we want to stop this, we have to stop it now. We have to stop it effectively. And one of the things I think we absolutely have to do is to stop the financing. We have to go after the users. We can't see a cocaine user as an innocent victim. We have to see them as terrorist financiers, the root of the problem, the root of the evil. And what you do with someone who's financing terrorists, you confiscate their assets. Because if they don't have any money, they can't finance it. So with that, I sign off. Thank you for watching.